Joining us now, longtime friend of the show. You may know him from his legendary blog, Rany on the Royals, or from articles on The Ringer, or spots at Sports Radio 810, or his Royals blog, Coffin Corner, or maybe on past episodes of our show. Welcome back, Rany Jazayerli. How are you tonight?
I'm good, guys. How are you guys?
We're doing great. We're right in the thick of the draft. Obviously, we have to talk. We knew that Austin and I hadn't been potting for a little bit, and we knew that when we came back, you were going to be the first call that we made to make sure that everything's still rocking and rolling. So before we get into Chief stuff, though, I'm just curious. You're obviously big Royals expert. They just voted or just passed the plans for the downtown stadium, the Crown Center, big 85 acre, big old new plans for the Royals. Do you feel positive about it? How are you feeling about the new plans?
So I'm tentatively very excited about the new stadium. I would describe the plans that I've seen as sort of high risk, high reward.
Sure.
In the sense, like, granted, I am not a Kansas City local. I don't know the city that well, but I thought, the surprise of the announcement was that after it seemed like for weeks, if not months, they were talking about the Washington Square Park area as
Yeah.
sort of where the stadium was going to go. And suddenly the announcement was Washington Square Park slash Crown Center. And then the announcement was a joint announcement with Hallmark. Um, it's a subtle distinction and it wouldn't move the ballpark by much, but if you're putting the ballpark right next to Crown Center and renovating Crown Center as part of this development project, it does materially change what the ambition of this project is. And I can say, I mean, growing up in Kansas in the '80s, I mean, coming to Kansas City, Crown Center was where it was at. Like
Yeah.
Crown Center was the destination. Like my older sisters always wanted to stay at Crown Center so they could go shopping.
Of
Um, my brother and I wanted to stay near Worlds of Fun, of course.
course.
But so I will say about, I don't know, 15 years ago when I started coming to Kansas City regularly to, once or twice a year to watch the Royals play, and I'd look for, hotels online or whatever, use Priceline, try and find a good deal. And when there'd be a good deal around Crown Center, I'd be like, oh, that sounds great. It's Crown Center. And I stayed there, and I got to say, I mean, I'm not going to say it's the fault of Crown Center. It's basically like the structural decline of the shopping mall in America over the last 40 years. But like, it's a shell of its former self, right?
Sure.
Like, it's just so it is in need of renovation, I think, and I think of not just renovation, but really just kind of rethinking the whole idea. So if you can turn that into a vibrant shopping district next to a baseball stadium that's being used 81 days a year, there's the potential is there for a truly, like, city changing real estate project. So I think it's exciting. I think, but if it's done poorly, it could be it could be kind of a boondoggle. I mean, this is a $2 billion project to start, and probably with cost overruns more than that. So
Right.
again, high risk, high reward. I'm excited about it. I think if they do it right, it could be absolutely, uh, amazing. But the devil's in the details, and we don't have the details yet. So I'm just kind of cautiously optimistic and waiting for more information.
Yeah, we haven't really had details from the Royals this whole time, so it's at least good to know, that they're actually gonna have a plan moving forward. I like the partnership with Hallmark. They designed the original Royals crown. I
Mhm.
love being in a place called Crown Center for the Royals. I just think it's
So good.
very, yeah, that branding partnership there is great. I wonder just out loud if they're dropping the name Kauffman from the new stadium, or if it's going to be some type of Hallmark field at Kauffman Stadium. I don't know. It'll be interesting kind of to see how they end up branding it. But in general, yes, I think the vibe here is really positive. I think everyone's really excited. They're going to make the streetcar more, they're going to beef that up a little bit more and get more use out of that. And yeah, I just think it's a overall pretty exciting time. I just hope by the time 2030 rolls around, the Royals are good again. We will transition because that is a painful topic right now. We were all set last year to do our usual thing last season for the Chiefs. And then the season actually happened, and we didn't really do our typical freak out about the playoffs and the playoff run and the Super Bowl and all that stuff with you because it never materialized. Have we flushed the worst season in the Andy Reid era down the drain fully yet? Are you ready to just move forward with 2026? Is there any lingering bile in your mouth from 25?
I mean, I'm ready to move on.
Yeah.
We'll find out if the Chiefs are.
Yeah.
Ask me in like mid-October how
Yes.
I'm feeling. But
Yes.
I mean, look, here's how I would put it. This is the optimist in me, always trying to find the silver lining. We ever since the comparison between Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady came to be, which is to say, very early in Patrick Mahomes' career when we thought that just as one GOAT was finishing his, at the twilight of his career, that the next GOAT may be in Kansas City. We always feared that just like Tom Brady missed an entire season to, a major injury, that like if you're going to play long enough in the NFL, the odds are great that you are going to suffer a major season ending, possibly career threatening injury. But what were the odds when you think about 7 consecutive AFC championship game appearances, 5 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowl championships, winning the AFC West every single year? And you think about all the injuries that Patrick Mahomes did suffer. I mean, dislocated kneecap, badly sprained ankle in the playoffs. And you think about how amazing it was that Patrick Mahomes never actually missed a meaningful game. He missed a
Knocked out
half.
with a concussion. Yep.
Yeah, he missed
Yep.
half with a weird concussion, which wasn't exactly a concussion because it was more of a compression of his carotid, which made it easier to be cleared after the game. But like he missed almost an entire half, and we needed anything as possible. He missed, a drive. I guess think it was the following year or maybe 2 years later, in the Jaguars game when he sprained that ankle. But at no point did Patrick Mahomes' health jeopardize a Chiefs season. And then when it finally did happen, like this injury that on the one hand you hope never to happen, on the other hand, I've been kind of dreading since it was clear that he was the promised one. Like 37 seconds of game time after he blew out his ACL, the Chiefs were eliminated from postseason contention, like from even making the playoffs. And yes, they lost every single game after that, but all that did was move them up the draft. Shout out to the Raiders kicker who nailed a 60-yarder with
That's right.
the final play of the game to move them up a couple more spots in the draft. Apparently not enough because they had to trade up from there, but still, every slot helps. But I mean, we are, I think, all optimistic that Patrick Mahomes will be ready for the season. Maybe not 100%, but if I had to, gun to my head, I think that Patrick Mahomes will take the first snap of the season in week 1. Maybe that's overly optimistic, but like he's given me no reason before or since the injury to think that he won't heal, that he won't work his rehab like a maniac and be back in time. And so when you take a step back and you say that Patrick Mahomes might have blown out his ACL in the middle of his career, and the cost of the Chiefs will have been about 37 seconds of meaningful football. That's kind of incredible.
Yeah.
So that's the optimistic way of looking at this. That like, am I ready to flush this season out? Yes, I am. But like, and on some level, even before he got hurt, like let's put it this way: if the Chiefs had been 14-0 instead of 6-8 when he got hurt, would it really have changed anything?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, probably not, because I don't think we're winning anything with Gardner Minshew. And Gardner Minshew got hurt like 3 minutes after Patrick Mahomes did. Anyway, we definitely were not winning anything with Chris Latica, no matter what seed we were in the playoffs.
No.
So, like, on some level, like, yeah, if Patrick Mahomes is going to get hurt, it might as well be hurt at the end of what was already the season from hell.
Yeah. I mean, if he didn't get hurt and if it was Pat that rest of that season, they still weren't going anywhere.
Right.
Like it was, there was nothing really to lose. other than obviously
A
we
playoff game and his sterling 17-4
ugh,
playoff record. So
yeah, yep, that's right. Okay, that's 2025. We don't really need to dwell on it too much.
Move past it.
We're moving past it. It was a dark time. Austin and I went from potting basically once a week for 6 years to being every now and then. The Chiefs this week have made three selections through the first three rounds of the draft. We are recording this Friday night, so we know that after the Chiefs sent Cleveland a third and a fifth rounder to move up three spots in the first round from 9 to 6. Trade value that, by the way, most analysis says is adequate, maybe a little on the pricey side, but definitely not a fleece in either direction. They went with cornerback Mansour Delane at number 6, and then they kept their picks 29 and 40 and took defensive tackle Peter Woods at 29 and edge R. Mason Thomas at 40. We're going to talk about these guys individually a little bit more, but how are you just kind of feeling? What's your vibe like for the draft so far for the Chiefs process?
okay, so I'm going to take this in a weird direction right now. Okay,
Please.
I'm gonna play a thought experiment with you guys. All
We
right.
love those.
Okay, and I want you to give me an immediate answer. If you don't have an immediate answer, then don't answer at all.
Okay.
Because just like if it doesn't come to you immediately, then it's not worth asking.
Okay.
Let us imagine a scenario in which the NFL decides they are going to expand our 33rd team. All right, and come up with a wild scenario. Donald Trump threatens to shut down the NFL unless they to appease him they offer him
The 33rd team's
the
Mar-a-Lago.
Mar-a-Lago
Uh-huh.
team.
Uh-huh.
It worked
And
great with the USFL. So.
there you go. He won't run this one into the ground, I promise. But as part of the process, they give very generous terms to this new expansion team, meaning every single existing NFL team can only protect one player on their roster
Okay.
before the expansion draft, right? Like typically expansion teams will get to pick, from existing teams after the existing teams protect a certain number of players.
Mm-hmm.
Normally that's, 10, 12,
Mhm.
15. Let's say it's one. Now, when you protect a player, you are protecting his contract status as well. So obviously if he's, already on a long-term deal, you get to protect that deal. If he's going to be a free agent in a year, you only get him for 1 year, et cetera. Obvious. Okay. So every team in football is protecting one player on the roster. The Chiefs get to protect one player. Who are they protecting?
Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick
Mahomes. Okay, that's not the question. That one's not a difficult question. They get to protect two players. Who's the second? Nope.
I mean,
Too late.
yeah.
Too late. And
Who
here's the
is
thing.
it?
It's not, to me, at least 3 months ago, this was not a difficult question at all. It's a very easy answer. It's Josh Simmons.
Okay, sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
clearly
Yep.
Josh Simmons.
All right.
Because he plays an extremely premium position left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
He was, from what we could see in the granted limited time he was on the field, but
Sure,
in that
8
limited
games.
time, he was an above average, maybe even top 10 tackle as a rookie, but I think comfortably above average. There was no reason to think that he would not be in short order. And by short order, I mean as soon as this coming year, a top 5 left tackle in all of football. And he's on a rookie contract. There's just no one else on the roster who comes close to that in terms of present day value,
Yeah.
long-term club control, and you're paying him so much below market value because obviously a premium left tackle, the minute they can hit the free agent market, their starting salary is $25 million and probably goes up from there.
Yeah.
Like what we saw from Josh Simmons, I saw enough. Now, yes, he missed what was it, 4 weeks with an undisclosed personal issue. We still don't know exactly what that was. And then he missed the last 4 to 6 weeks of the season with an injury. But of all the injuries you can suffer in football or in pretty much any sport, a broken bone is the safest one to expect a full recovery from, right?
Mhm.
Right.
He broke his hand, freak injury. I think he'll be completely fine. So in January, when I was looking for what are the positives to take from this nightmare of a season, Josh Simmons coming in as the 32nd overall pick, especially after watching the fourth overall pick. What was his name? Will Campbell, Patriots
Oh,
left
yeah.
tackle, just
Yeah.
get beaten
T-Rex
like
arms.
a drum in the Super Bowl by the Seahawks over and over, and he went number 4 overall. and we're sitting pretty with number 32 overall. Like to me, Josh Simmons' development and the proving that he was completely recovered from his fairly serious knee injury in college, and just the skills that we saw. I mean, he got called on, I think it was twice he was called for holding on a play that was absolutely legal, but like he was just
too dominant.
He so thoroughly whipped the defensive end that the refs called him for holding, because it's like there's no way you're supposed to be able to bring a guy down to the ground with a legal maneuver. That's how good he was. So I felt really good about Josh Simmons until we started hearing for the last 4 to 6 weeks.
Yep.
Rumor after rumor after rumor. Oh, the Chiefs are serious about taking a tackle with the number 9 overall pick. Oh, they got to think about the future. Jalen Moore could be a free agent here. Oh, they got to keep Patrick Mahomes upright. And granted, almost all of this chatter came from national reporters. I saw I'm not sure I saw any of this, certainly very little of this from like Kansas City based reporters and analysts, but national reporters kept reporting with a straight face that the Chiefs were seriously looking at taking a tackle. And I know a lot of Chiefs fans were just up in arms over this because it seemed like such a stupid idea.
Waste. Yeah.
But I was up in arms about this for not because it was dumb, but because if they were to take a tackle, it meant to me that whatever that personal issue Josh Simmons was dealing with was something far more serious than a 4-week stint, and that like his career very much might be in jeopardy. Whatever it was.
Peter Schrager kind of implied that at one point too. That he said, "I don't know about Josh Simmons," and he's pretty good about this stuff.
He's the one that, of all the people like that reported, that he's the one that who I take I think had the most credibility, and so I take his opinion the most seriously, and scared me the most. Yeah, I agree 100%. So we're recording this now. The first 3 rounds of the draft are in the books. The Chiefs have made 3 picks. The most important thing I can say, the best news I can say about this draft, the Chiefs did not take a tackle.
Yep.
And not only that, but if you saw the press conference that Brett Veach gave,
yeah.
I don't know if I can play it here. I don't know if it'll come through the sound, but if because I don't want to paraphrase.
Give it a shot. Yeah.
Let me see if this comes through here.
Sure.
It's funny because 3-4 weeks ago when we were going through the 30 visits, I bumped Steve and I said, we're going to bring our corner. And he's like, don't bring him in. Just don't bring him in. Let's just zoom him. Let's keep it quiet. Thought we did a good job. I think a lot of people thought we might go offensive line there. But this was our guy the whole time.
It's important to hear the quote because it sounds for all the world like even Brett Veach was like, can you believe they fell for
I got away with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say, I mean, as an aside, like if you were one of those reporters, like I have to assume Brett Veach was not the one telling reporters this because like if he was, he's burned a lot of context in the media by mocking.
He's not Sean Payton, who's going to take personal credit for his disinformation campaign. Okay,
and he's not Mike Vrabel, who's in a different type of trouble for media.
No, he's far from the worst offender right now. Depending on no matter how you define offense. But I assume like people were getting this from like, secondary, tertiary sources, people within the organization, but maybe not Brett Veach. But I mean, for him to so brazenly basically said, yeah, we were running a smokescreen and these guys fell for it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hilarious. It doesn't speak well of the people who reported it, quite frankly, that they were led to believe something which any educated Chiefs fan would have said, this seems absurd.
I saw a quote that said the Chiefs will take the first step towards solidifying their offensive line by taking a tackle at 9. And everyone in the Chiefs community was just like, what the hell are you talking about?
It was really one of those like, am I being gaslighted here? It's
right.
Josh Simmons, Kingsley Suamataia, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Jalen Moore.
Yeah.
I was saying 3 months ago that the 2026 Chiefs, if nothing else, has a chance to have their best offensive line in 20 years.
Yeah.
Like that is like depending, Jalen Moore might be below average, but like he's not far below average.
Right.
The other 4 should range from comfortably above average to elite. What on earth are you talking about? The Chiefs need a tackle. So fine. The only argument I think was, planning for 2027 because, Jalen Moore is going to be a free agent. It's like, okay, yes. And, in 2027, the Chiefs might need a tackle. They're going to need a lot of things in a year.
Right.
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 And some of those
Every
things
team
they
needs a lot
addressed.
of things.
Right.
I
If you're going
mean,
to look far enough into the future, you're going to need help at
yes.
every position.
Yes.
And some of those positions the Chiefs actually did address in with their draft picks. So anyway, so it was not just the fact that they didn't take a tackle, but just the dismissive attitude Brett Veach had in that press conference. I feel much, much better that Josh Simmons will report to camp. We have OTAs coming up here soon, and then in August, and then we'll be ready to start the season. That is honestly probably more important than anything else we learned in this draft because we'll talk about the draft picks. I guess now Mansour Delane ideally would have just as much trade value as Josh Simmons because you've got him for 5 years and not 4. Like they're probably neck and neck right now. But that should be the case when you're taking a guy in the top 10 of the draft.
Right.
He should have that kind of value. Josh Simmons was not a top 10 pick and still has that kind of value. So anyway, so that's the first thing I want to say. I just want to make, if you're a Chiefs fan looking for some optimism, the fact that Josh Simmons seems to be, yes, he will be our left tackle for hopefully the next 4 years at least, is better news than anything that came out of the draft in terms of players selected, I think.
It's kind of like they drafted a left tackle.
Exactly.
Josh Simmons.
As long as Brett Veach has like an average amount of self-awareness, which I think that he does, I completely agree with this take. I love this because I mean, he has to understand that if he's going to go up there and laugh about how he deceived everyone, how the organization deceived everyone into taking a tackle, and then 6 months from now, Josh Simmons is retired or is out of the sport. How bad that would look, optics wise.
It would look very bad, yes. Which is why I'm hoping he's not that brazen. And look, in the defense of some of these national reporters, a lot of them were also saying, the Chiefs are looking heavily at Mansour Delane, and a lot of Chiefs fans did not take that seriously at all.
Right.
But at least there, it was people were looking based on past tendencies, as opposed to current needs.
Right.
And like we can get into that now, the Mansour Delane pick, because I was not expecting it, and I was not a big fan of it at first. I've come around on it for a couple of reasons. But the first thing I'll say is obviously the reason why I think all of us were kind of surprised and not huge fans of it. In a sense, is actually a tribute to the organization. It's not that 100%. They don't need a cornerback or this isn't the right guy to take if you're going to take a cornerback. It's more just, we can magically conjure up cornerbacks on day 3. Why do we need to take one here?
Yeah.
Which is that's actually a compliment to the organization. So if our biggest problem is they took a position where they're so good at developing talent that they don't need to take a guy in the first round, that's not the worst thing in the world, especially when you consider the one time they did take a guy in the first round who was a cornerback was one of the, was the best corner, it was exactly as good as you would expect a first round cornerback to be in an organization that can turn fourth round cornerbacks into Pro Bowlers.
Right. And they traded up for him too. Maybe they know what they're doing.
Exactly. And that's when I thought of it, I'm like, it's not that I was expecting a cornerback there, and we have a lot of needs. And I think part of the frustration, people are like, we just traded Trent McDuffie, and now we're giving up more than Trent McDuffie to get a guy who just replaces him. But what you're getting is Mansour Delane at $9 million a year for the next 4 years, as opposed to paying $31 million a year for Trent McDuffie. You're basically paying, you made this draft pick to save $22 million a year.
Yep.
Which is a lot of money.
And hopefully not see much of a drop off in production between the two players, or maybe even Delane could be better.
Maybe an improvement. I mean, most of the scouting reports I've seen is that basically he could be as good as Trent McDuffie. And look, if he's as good as Trent McDuffie, that's a hell of a player. I think I would take that right now. Like he's that for the next 4 years. If he's as good as McDuffie was for the last 4 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he might be better outside than Trent McDuffie.
I think. Well, given that they refuse to play McDuffie in the slot, like almost to a maddening degree. Like if you're going to play him on the boundary anyway, I think I agree. I think. Delane might actually be better suited out there. So the only issue I have with it is just, did you have to trade a 3rd round pick to move up?
Yeah, right. Well, what do you think about that? Because this was another interesting little nugget that there's kind of 2 aspects to the trade. One, Brett Veach said, we felt like we needed to do this when Carnell Tate came off the board a little bit early at number
Mhm.
4, which is interesting because they obviously have not taken a wide receiver through 3 picks, and that was something that we maybe expected them to do. But he hinted that that maybe was on their board, and that was a guy they would have gone up to get. But also, I know you've always been a big analytics guy, that this was like an analytics decision that we looked at all our simulations and we decided that he was not going to be there at 9, and we
The
needed to
Saints are
go
going
up
to take
2
him.
spots to get ahead of Washington and New Orleans.
Yeah, it was to me the it was a weird use of the term analytics
It was.
Mhm. Agreed.
because to me what he was describing wasn't what I think of as analytics. It sounded like it was psychology. It's
Mhm.
like, what do we think the commander's instincts are thinking? Like, I don't know how there's a limit to how much you can use analytics to figure out a team's a team psychology, because like
Yeah.
Right.
there's
Right.
look, analytics are not going to tell you that the Arizona Cardinals are going to take a running back with the 3rd overall pick.
Right.
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 Psychology would tell you that Cardinals don't know what the hell they're doing, so they're
Sure.
probably going to do a dumbass move like take a running back with the 3rd overall pick. Okay, fair enough, right? So
Don't analytics look backwards more than forwards in general? I
I
mean,
mean, generally speaking, you're using past, you know, data to predict the future, right? And that's why
yeah.
every stock commercial will say, past performance is not an indicator of, future performance or whatever.
Right.
So I'm sure that that's probably what he was getting at. Like they're studying tendencies, right?
hmm
But I think a lot of it's just like they had a feeling, and whether that feeling comes from data or it comes from sources, contacts, people, what they're hearing chatter from the industry, or just looking at the roster of the Commander and the Saints, being like they really need a cornerback. But they clearly felt like one of those two teams, especially once Tate came off the board, that either the Commanders would take him at 7 or the Saints would take him at 8. Because we knew. I mean, the Browns, telegraphed what they wanted, and look, credit to them. They
Yeah.
wanted an offensive tackle. They wanted Spencer Fano. They got Fano, and they still got a 3rd and 5th round pick for doing nothing.
Yep.
Good work if you can get it. So we'll have that question for a while. I will say when the trade was made, I was convinced that it wasn't necessary. I trust Brett Veach enough that his comments, the confidence with which he says, we knew this guy was not going to be there, or we had a very strong feeling that he would be taken by one of those two teams. I'll lend at least some credence to that. Like we can argue about whether or not they needed to give up that much. Like, was the difference between Delane and someone like Ruben Bain, who dropped to 15? Because my dream scenario going into the draft was we might have actually been able to like trade down, because there was talk
Mhm.
that Ruben Bain was going to drop, and I know the Cowboys had, I think, picks 12 and 20, and
Yeah.
our friend Peter Schrager, I think, was what he actually had that in his draft, his final draft day projections, was the Chiefs trading 9 and 29 for 12 and 20. They could have done that, gotten Ruben Bain, and then at 20, you could have taken Casey Concepcion, or there are
Yeah.
a lot of players at that. So that was sort of my dream scenario going in. Having said that, I'm coming around to the idea of Delane for a couple of reasons. One is the track record of taking cornerbacks in the top 10, top 6 is really good. Like if you look at the last 5 guys who were drafted that high at the cornerback position, 4 of the 5 I think were made Pro Bowls. The other guy was just suffered a lot of injuries in his career. But like when you take a Sauce Gardner, a Stingley that high, generally those guys are this, not only is their ceiling high, but their floor is high too. Like it's
Well,
you don't
I mean,
usually miss on those guys.
past the 6th pick, you've got Pat Surtain, J.C. Horn, guys in the top 10 that maybe were not quite top 6, but yeah, I mean,
It's
the data's good.
It's you've got a very good chance of having at least an average or above average play. He's going to be a starter. Like the risk that he's just a bust at that position is pretty small.
Mhm.
And I mean, you think, oh, it's a 6th pick in the draft. Yeah, the 6th pick in the draft is a bust all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
just that part of it, I will, I mean, let's put it this way. I like Ruben Bain a lot. I thought that, he would have, and he fit the Chiefs' needs really well. But there was certainly a scenario in which he turned out to be not a good player.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like maybe a rotational guy, a rich man's Felix Anadike Ozama, but like not an impact player. I think the risk that Delane is not an impact guy, pretty small. So that part of it I like. And then of course the other part of it is I'm a cheap date, and so when I found out that Mansour Delane is Muslim, I'm like, takbir. I'm like, yes.
That's
Representation,
great.
I'm like, sorry,
representation
guys.
matters.
Yeah.
It matters.
I'm
That's
Yeah.
sorry,
right.
but that I'm certainly rooting for this man to have tremendous success.
Sure.
And if nothing else, the Chiefs have a good history here because, of course, they've only, to the best of my knowledge, they've only had one Muslim football player on their roster in their history.
Mir Abdullah?
Uh, Hussein Abdullah was
Well, Hussein.
No, that's
Hussein
right.
Abdullah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that one player actually had a, was a very good player in his role with the Chiefs. So you may recall Hussein Abdullah had famously taken an entire season off from the NFL in 2012 to go
That's right.
perform the pilgrimage. He went on Hajj with his brother. They both took a year off from the NFL, and his brother Hamza was kind of coming to the end of his career, and I don't think he ever made it back to the NFL. But Hussein came back ready to play, and this was right after Andy Reid had been hired as the Chiefs head coach. And we're going from like the worst season in Chiefs history in 2012.
He picked a good year to take off.
Yeah, well, exactly. I wish we all could have taken that year off.
Yeah.
2012 season, not a fun season. I couldn't even enjoy. I mean, I would have enjoyed the humiliation of Scott Pioli, except that, of course, that was also a year of tragic murder
Javon
suicide.
Belcher, yeah.
So it was just an awful year all around.
Bad.
They brought in Andy Reid, and we're all thinking, okay, they're sparing no expense. Give Clark Hunt credit, but does Andy Reid still got it? And one of the very first transactions they made, because I hired him in early January, they signed Hussein Abdullah as just one of these like just kind of non-drafted, or not. He was a non-drafted free agent, but he was just kind of he was an unrestricted free agent in mid-February. It was about a week before they announced the Alex Smith trade. Everyone kind of like looks back at the Andy Reid era really started with the bold decision to go out and trade for Alex Smith. But I can say for me personally, when they signed Hussein Abdullah coming back from Hajj, I was like, well, that's different. And the vibes were, at least for me, the vibes were immaculate. And I think he played like 4 seasons with the Chiefs. And
You remember his best play?
I remember the pick six.
Pick 6 on Tom Brady on that Monday Night Football beatdown.
Changed the NFL rules because he got a penalty for after he scored. He went down in the end zone and just did a thank you prayer and like was I think flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct. And the NFL literally changed the rules afterwards to saying that praying in the end zone or praying after a play would no longer constitute unsportsmanlike conduct.
Sure.
But
Didn't
a very
like
good
the
backup
optics on that one. Yeah.
and a good in the clubhouse. He was like, I think, a really beloved guy during his time. And just like I said, helped change the vibes, like the biggest vibe shift in maybe Kansas City sports history from the 2012 Chiefs to the 2013 Chiefs. So, now the difference was he was, a backup and obviously the expectation here is that Mansour will be a superstar, but I'm excited to be rooting for him. And again, great. I think he's a really good player at a really key position and the positional value. So much of this draft was about, do you take a potentially elite guy at a position that isn't, considered not just a position of need, but like a position of value in the NFL, like, a Caleb Downs at safety or Sonny Styles at linebacker, right? Or do you take a guy who's a good player, but at a position where the elite guys make 30, 40 million a year, like defensive end or
right.
Or wide receiver.
And maybe there's a little bit more risk. I mean, like a guy like Bain, who I wanted, like you're taking on a little bit of risk there, in addition to the fact that it's a more premium position.
Right.
So
and that's the thing.
Interesting top 10.
Right. And that was the thing. We all along were like wide receiver, defensive end. Those are the positions of need, but also the positions where you can save a ton of money by not having to sign a guy in free agency. But at both positions, I think there's a lot of risk. You see a lot of busts among players in that position. So on some level, I'll give the Chiefs credit. They went out and got cornerback, which is also a very well-paid position, as we know from the Trent McDuffie contract.
Right.
But where the risk, at least at the top of the draft, does seem to be less. I think we were just all so, we took for granted that Spagnuolo and Dave Merritt, and gee, I wasn't expecting Dave Merritt's name to ring quite the way it does at this exact moment, 48 hours ago. But we just assumed that those guys could turn any cornerback into a great player. But like why take the risk? If you can turn this one into a truly elite cornerback, it actually does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I actually really like that observation. With corner, you're taking kind of maybe not quite as highly paid as an edge rusher or a wide receiver, but certainly a position that the Chiefs needed, certainly a very highly compensated position, and one with a lot less risk. I like that a lot. So obviously we have then at 29, defensive tackle Peter Woods, and then edge rusher Mason Thomas at 40, which leaves us with oops all defense through 2 rounds. And because the Chiefs traded up for Mansour Delane, you took 3 players in the top 100. They'll pick again at pick 109 tomorrow, and here you are with an edge rusher with the third of those picks, which we all knew the Chiefs desperately needed. No additions to the offense. What do you think of the draft strategy and the resource allocation through the first couple of rounds?
I think it's risky, but I think I agree from this perspective. Well, there are two points I want to make. One is, if you're thinking about just 2026, maybe this is not the right move. Maybe you should have added more offense. But
yeah,
the thing about having Patrick Mahomes is, on the one hand, you never want to give up on a year. The expectation should be you make the playoffs every single year. At the same time, the perspective should be you should never mortgage the future, because you are going to be competitive every single year. So build for greatness in the long term, because whatever that long term is, anytime in the next 10 years, you already have the quarterback. You already have a Super Bowl winning caliber quarterback, which is the one thing that's really not negotiable, right? So you want to build a great team around him. And from that perspective, yeah, getting the cornerback is great. Getting a defensive tackle, again, as much as we want an edge, my impression is that Peter Woods is better at being a defensive tackle than any of the guys available at 29 were at being an edge. Like, there were some good edge players out there,
right?
But what
DT1.
Peter Woods can do, sorry,
DT1 on the consensus board.
Yeah, he was. And I saw some, a draft board before the college football season, where he was like the number 1 player in the draft. Like, there were people coming off his season at Clemson in 2024. It was like, this guy's, a top 5 pick in the draft. So, and he wasn't bad, and he wasn't hurt. He just was utilized differently by Clemson. And I'm not a Dabo Swinney guy anyway, so I'll just blame him for misusing him or whatever.
Who is?
Yeah, right.
But Chris Jones is not getting any younger. And so it's not just like, on the one hand, I love the idea of pairing them together in the hope that, at least for a year or two, if Chris Jones is still elite for another year or two, you're giving him potentially the best interior line teammate he's had. Charles Omenihu, who had a brief moment where he was like really, really good in 2023. And you know what? That was like that was at the moment where the Chiefs defense was basically about as good as it's ever been. That was the rare team that almost won the Super Bowl with its defense more than Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
And there's a chance that if Peter Woods is what they think he is, that, like, pairing those two together in the interior can create so much havoc that you just don't need that much pressure coming from the outside. And then, of course, at some point, Chris Jones is no longer going to be an impact guy. And so you've got to plan for the future. And without him, the other thing I like about this guy is that he's really a third down pass rush kind of dude. They signed, what's his name, Tonga, Kyrie's Tonga, to be, the nose tackle, just absolute run stuffer. But I think he pairs very well with Peter Woods as more of the third down, obvious pass situations, just bring the heat from the inside dude. So I really like that pick. And then, Mason Thomas, I don't know if he was the best defensive end available, but a lot of people think he was. And the position definitely was one of need. And what I like about him is that he does not seem to be a classic Spags guy. He's not just big, burly, he's not George Karlaftis, where it's just like, just crush the pocket, just push, push, push. This guy's got burst, acceleration, bend around the edge. Yeah, he can't push his way through a tackle, but he can run around him. And the NFL is changing, right? And I think that was so much of what we saw this past season, mostly on offense, but I think also on defense, was that the Chiefs, after years and years of kind of doing it their way and just like ignoring the fact that the league was changing, the league changing finally caught up to them.
Yep.
And so I think that this is a sign that they were going to have to adjust. And so the fact that they got this guy, I'm excited about it. I mean, ultimately, what they're telling us is that on defense, on defense, the problem was the talent, whereas on offense, the problem was the scheme. And obviously, Matt Nagy is gone. The wide receivers coach whose name has already been banished from my memory, Connor Embry.
Yes,
Connor Embry. Yes, the Royals brought in the good Connor Dawson. The Chiefs,
That's right.
The Chiefs brought in the bad coach Connor Embry.
Connor.
He's gone. Was it Chris Shea, the new guy? He's very well respected.
Yeah, Chris O'Shea. Yeah.
Chris O'Shea, and then of course, and then the running back room they brought in Kenneth Walker. Like, that's the one infusion of talent there. Like, the gamble here is they're going in with basically the same wide receiver core, if not worse. And they're hoping, they'll have a full season of Rashee Rice. They'll have a healthy Xavier Worthy, doesn't get injured on the third play of the season. But that is the risk here, is that they still don't have a wide receiver core. And what I would say is, if that's the strategy, if the strategy here is basically we're going to build an elite defense and hope that our GOAT quarterback will create enough miracles on offense to make it work. Well, that's what worked in New England for the better part of 20 years. And frankly, that's what worked in 2023 for the Chiefs.
Yep.
Like, the 2023 Chiefs won the Super Bowl with Marquez Valdes-Scantling is probably their number one receiver start to finish.
Yep.
So I'm okay with that. Like, yeah, it's not as fun to watch them win 21-17 as it was to have them win 42-35, but
it's not.
It is a strategy that works. And then they can still, they can focus on wide receivers next year or whatever. Like, this is not maybe a long-term strategy, but I think it works in 2026. Like, they're basically asking Patrick to work miracles for one more year on offense, but in the meantime, rebuild that defense from the ground up, really, with hopefully three new starters, all top 40 picks, coming in this year.
Well, how do you feel that do you think the Chiefs are expecting to win in 2026? I mean, does it feel like they made these moves for both now and the future to you?
I think the Chiefs' strategy is probably, let's go 11-6 and make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Whether that's whether that's winning the division or not, if we're the 5 or 6 seed, that's okay. For one seed, figure out what they've got. This is a multi-year process, because I think that they are looking obviously at replacing Travis Kelce in a year, and frankly, Chris Jones, if not next year, maybe in 2 years. Like, they know that 2/3 of this, Hall of Fame triumvirate is not long for their roster.
Yeah.
And that transition is still not complete. And so again, I think that's why you want to be careful not to draft too much for need in this particular draft, particularly since it's not considered a very strong draft. But draft the best available players, knowing that if you still have holes, you're going to be able to fill them in a year or two, because you're not putting all your eggs in the basket for 2026. But your goal is make the playoffs, and let's see what, by the end of the year, you figured out the offense a little bit. You figured out which receivers you could rely on. You figured out your scheme with an all-pro level running back, as opposed to, the remains of Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. And let's find out just how good Patrick Mahomes can be. That can he carry a deeply flawed, an even more flawed roster than the 2023 Chiefs? Can he carry them into the playoffs and make a run? And I think that's a viable strategy. Look, it kills me that the dynasty is over, but they can build a new one. And again, we look at New England as our model. They went 10 years between dynasties, but they had 2 dynasties.
Yep.
Right? Like, if we have to wait 2 or 3 years and then before a new dynasty truly gets started, The important thing is it gets started.
Yeah, that's a price
Right.
I'm willing to pay. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly. And look, in between, it's not like the Patriots just went away. No, they were competitive every year. They made the playoffs almost every year. They
Yep.
they they, they missed it. They missed one year when their quarterback blew out his knee. Well, we missed the playoffs when our quarterback blew out his knee.
Yep.
Okay,
And they
not
won 11
exactly.
and 6
Yeah,
that year,
no, not exactly the same. Let's not get into the details, gentlemen. But otherwise identical.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but the point is, like, I think right now, would I take 11-6 and being a 5 or 6 seed, going on the road in the first round and having Patrick Mahomes, put the fear of God into whatever team he's, unfortunate enough to face in the first round. Yes, I would take that. And I mean, it would not shock me if they won two playoff games and they're back in the AFC Championship game again in, what is again a rebuilding year.
yeah.
The hope is that this draft ends up being like the 2022 draft, an absolute just franchise altering home run. The problem though is the 2022 draft, they had all those extra picks. And this
Yes.
year they had an
Yeah.
extra picks and then they just traded away two of them to move up. Somehow they were able to move up in 2022, get McDuffie and still had extra picks, but that's what happens when you trade Tyreek Hill.
To your point though, Randy, and I think this is an astute observation that I just wanted to build on. The fourth round, or excuse me, the third round is now over. We've been recording while the draft was going on. Brett Veach had the discipline not to trade back in with some of his extra 2027 draft capital. And by all accounts, this 2027 class is a much better class. So I do think like the fact that somebody tied Brett Veach up during the third round and kept him from trading back in. And the fact that they used 74 this year and not their extra third round pick that they have next year to trade up, I think is indicative of this being not a rebuilding year, but the 2022 draft was a good draft class and they had a lot of capital to throw at it. And even in that draft, they didn't add anything to the offense, which, had lost Tyreek Hill. They just counted on a scheme change and
they
the
added
best quarterback
Sky
in the world.
Moore. How dare you?
Well, and that's exactly my point. They spent a second round pick on Sky Moore, and they still had like a generationally great draft. But he was the only offensive player they added, except for Pacheco in the seventh round, and they knocked that out of the park. And obviously, I mean, there's not a dynasty if they don't nail that 2022 draft. But I think you're right that this is a 2026, 2027 draft and not a 2026 will fix all of our problems and win the next two Super Bowls.
It's a multi-year process. I mean, one thing that's easy to forget is the way the rookie wage scale works. Like the thing that made the 2022 draft so impactful is not just they got all this talent. They got all this talent on like really cheap contracts.
Yeah.
Yes.
The thing about just moving up from number 9 to number 6, like, do you know what the essentially the 4-year guarantee here is for this number 6 overall pick in this draft? Mansour Lane, it's almost $42 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Like Josh Simmons taken a year ago, I was mentioning, granted, it was last year, but with the 32 overall pick, 14.6 million.
Yeah.
So, even McDuffie drafted whatever it was, I think 22nd or
23rd.
Yeah, it was, the salary cap was a lot lower then. It was also around $14 million.
Yeah.
So even if they hit here, like they're paying $25 to $30 million over 4 years more for Delane than they did for any of their picks, basically, any of their first round picks in the last couple of years. And then obviously drafting at the top of the second round. And then the end of the first round, like they're going to be paying more money to these guys. So there's a limit to how much impact you can make when those guys they've had to account for the fact that these guys are going to be taking up more of the salary cap than other drafts necessarily did. But let's wait and see it, because I mean, look, they have, a 4th round pick, and I think they have 4 more picks remaining. And when we talk about that 2022 draft, it wasn't just about the day 1 and day 2 picks. It was about
the greatest 7th round
Joshua
of all
Williams
time.
and Isaiah Pacheco and Jalen Watson, and so they may still get, if they can get another starter or two rotational guys here in the rest of the draft, that's going to have an impact. But I do think this is a multi-year process. They're going to have to nail more than one draft in order to really get back to the top of the NFL. But as long as they've got Patrick Mahomes, they're going to be a playoff team unless just everything goes to hell in a handbasket like it did last year.
Yeah, hopefully, knock on every piece of wood that you've ever seen. But yeah, appreciate catching up with you again, Rany. That was fun. We'll be back at it. We took our mental breather, but camp and all that type of stuff. I'm sure we'll check in with you and see what you're up to this summer.
Yeah,
But
Matt Quartaro said we had to take a mental breather day.
that's right. So therefore we did.
I don't need a mental breather.
You don't. That's true.
You
Tweet
don't.
it. Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, thanks, Rany. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time.